All right, so to pick up where we left off there on the previous video, we were looking at the save button, and I was mentioning that it's disabled when when you're not editing an existing work center, right? So, which that's kind of makes sense. We have a message here that's going to pop up that's going to tell the user that they've either created a new work center, and oh, here's the name of it, right? Because I'm pulling the name from the code, or you've updated an existing work center, so on and so forth. So the transform is going to look a little bit different on the save versus the create and add. Because when I save, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload the table data, and I'm going to reset the form. So the form stays dirty when I save, meaning whatever the user put in there, it stays in the form after I hit the save button. It doesn't automatically clear out. So what I do is it's called edit form. So component edit form function, I'm going to have it reload the data, but I'm going to filter on where the ID equals true. And there will never be an ID equal to true. So we're going to be, safe there. I like to change this to -1. And then what it's going to do is it's going to hide the whole thing, right? So after I save, it's going to hide the thing and then just take me back to the table. So let's see how that behaves. So if I go back here, we'll go ahead and create a new one. Let's just say test work center. Let's pick an image. So these images come from our image table. So if you want to have a picture or an image of your work center, you can save those in images, and then here they'll show up in the drop-down list. So you can link an image table or a attachments or documents to pretty much anything in Fuse, and just add a select input with whatever kind of filter on that. Where we've talked about how to do the filter, and that's very simple. We'll put this into a work center group, and I'll pick my shift group. See, it's required. It has a little star there, so we'll just set that to default, and the rest looks good. So if I hit save, it created the work center. It gives me, and it got rid of the form, right? And here it is. It popped right up in my table. Now if I edit this work center, see, it looks a little bit different, and I can set a description here. So we'll call it new description, and go ahead and hit save. And now it updated my subscription. And here it just tells me that it updated the work center. So this is all just done, again, right here in this action steps for that particular button. And then same if I look at the create and add action steps and I go to the transformation, this one here is going to load the table data, table 1. It's going to refresh it, and it's going to reload the form. The difference is that this one is not toggling the form off the screen. So it resets the form to being empty, so I can just create another work center repetitiously, right? So that's the difference. So building an application that provides the user with various different features and functions is just a matter of what you want it to do, and you can certainly make it do that. Things that you wouldn't be able to necessarily do in other tool sets. So this button is going to be totally hidden if it's not empty. So right, if we don't have an ID, right, or if we do have an ID, because what this is saying is if this is nil or empty, but then I put that a not around it. So if it's not nil or empty, the ID, then we're going to see the button, right? And we put all of our advanced stuff in there, so looks pretty good to me. So if we go here and scroll down, we have the create and add. If I click on an existing one where there is an ID, notice I have no create and add. So that's how that works. So navigating through these tabs, what we chose to do was add a tab bar element. So there's a tab bar element, which allows me now to create, basically like layers. So I have my details form. If I click on history, now I have a table. Where used, there's another table that's, pulling or querying data from somewhere else in the system, right? And then we have the production run, which is pulling data from production runs. We should not have a form filter there. So yeah, it's auto loading, where it's taking the ID from the edit form, and it's going to auto load all the production runs for that particular work center. So that's pretty much it, what we wanted to cover here. So to recap real quickly, we defined a data model, how we wanted to store work center information, and join that out to other data in the system. We learned how to write an API. We learned how to mutate data or create and update data in Fuse. We learned how to do an auto-generated screen using a template in a matter of seconds. And we learned how to create a pretty custom screen here. This obviously took a little bit longer. I can say that this particular screen, I've probably got about 6 to 8 hours of work into. It's pretty elaborate, the way we've designed it, but we have a lot of customers that will be using it. So we want to be absolutely sure that it's very usable, very easy, and streamlined. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you would spend 6 or 8 hours building, a screen. You could, if you were going to build a screen like this from scratch using traditional methods, it would probably take you about 3 weeks to get it as flushed out as we have it here in just a day. So it is still very quick time to value here in the Screen Designer. The one thing I will say that you'll want to get used to the most is basically the layout. So we use an HTML, CSS style Flex layout. So everything is in a container, and that takes a little bit of time getting used to, but essentially think of a container as direction of the components within that container. So everything is either going to be in a column, up and down, vertical, or it's going to be in a row, horizontal, left to right. So this container 16 is a column, and we can see it has a width. So it has a minimum width, and you can do additional styles, additional CSS properties down here, a standard width of 320. So you can define a max width, a min height, a max height, all of those things. Border colors, a lot of that is just drag and drop, point and click stuff here, like borders and radiuses and all this kind of stuff. But basically, column or row direction, right? And then you can justify the content to either the start, the end, the center, left, right, space between, space around, whatever you want to do. So as you're building out, let's go start a new blank template. So let's say I wanted to have a similar layout, and I was going to start from scratch. I'll show you what this is going to look like. So personally, you start with this element that's just called a screen, right? So this is just my screen. It's going to take 100% of the width and 100% of the height of my entire screen. And a screen by default is a column, so going to be top to bottom. I like to drag another container in here, and I like to make this 100%. I just like to put a single global container on top of the screen, so I can control everything within that container. It gives me some flexibility later on if I decide I need to change anything. So because I want to accomplish a similar layout where I go from basically from left to right with my filters, then my table, then my other stuff, right? So I'm doing, it's a row at that point. I don't need flex wrap on, and I'm going to change this to be a row direction. And we'll just save this as a template. None of that really matters for this particular example. So now I have this one main container. It's set up as a row. I'm going to drag another container into it, and I need this thing to be 320. So I like to use a 160 pixel kind of guideline, right? So 160, 320, whatever, 480, right? As you go. So it just keeps everything nice and neat and kind of follows some basic standards. So 320 gives me a container to put my filter into. And then I would do another container here for my table. Now, my table will probably be an auto width, and my height will be 100% because I want to take the whole height of the screen. I'm going to hit flex grow. And the reason why I do auto This one can just be 100%. The reason why I did auto here is because I'm going to have this other accordion thing kind of coming and going, right? So I want it to kind of adjust. So the auto will allow it to do that. And the flex grow means that if that thing is not being shown, the table will take up the whole width, right? So that's pretty much it. And then what I would do is drop another container out here onto the side. Sorry, let me get rid of that guy. This is the fun of flex containers. So let me do 500, get rid of that. Sometimes you got to give yourself a little space here because it's a little tough with the drag and drop. So this will be the container for that form that's going to come in and out. And maybe this is going to be 480 pixels wide, and it's going to be 100% of the height. And I'm going to go back to this one because this was my table. I'm going to make that auto flex grow again. So now I'm going to get started. I need to add a filter form. So I'm going to drop a form in there. This is where I'm going to put my search and create. So I'm going to scroll down here to interactions. I'm going to add a search button up here. And then I'm going to add a create button. Okay. So that's not exactly the layout that I'm looking for. We're going to fix that up right now. I'm going to go back to containers, drop a container in here. Remember, row or column. This I'm going to want a row because I want my buttons to be kind of like horizontally laid out, right? So I'm going to drag those up here. And this, I don't like that they're shoved close together. I mean, that's just personal preference. But now I'm going to come down here and go, let's put a space between them, spread them out evenly. Now we're good, right? So what's my table going to be? I'm going to drag a table in to the middle, and my height will be 100%. I want to do the full screen. Form filter name is going to be form 1, right? I just know that. I could click on here. It'll tell me form 1 as well. We don't want to auto load data in our form. I'm not going to auto load data in my table either because I want to make sure that the user uses the filter before we query the system because maybe there's a lot of data. Maybe this will be inventory. We'll use Work Center since that's what we're doing. Work Center. I'm using form 1 as my filter, right? So what I would probably do to save myself some headaches is I'm going to have this form also reference the Work Center. It makes it easier if my filter form and my table are both part of the same model, but they don't have to be. So that's kind of cool as well if you need to do something a little bit more custom. I'm going to drop a column out here, and I want that to be the Work Center code, and then we'll make that the name. And instead of dropping them, I'm going to copy this now, Control C, and I'm going to Control V, and we'll make this whatever that guy is, right? And then over here, maybe I'm going to get pretty fancy. I'm going to drop another container, make it the full height, and then I want to do that tab bar thing that I showed you. So I'm going to drop a tab bar in here. The height, I'll go 100%. And then I'm going to add some tabs. So down here at the bottom, I'll configure a details. I'll configure a advanced, just 2 tabs. That's totally fine. Again, just personal preference. I'm going to go ahead and change the tab bar color. I'm going to go with a white, which is, I know that's all F, right? So that's easy. So now I have this tab bar. And again, global container, I put that inside there, go 100%. This is going to be details. So I'm going to drop a table in, not a table, sorry. I'm going to drop a form in here because I want to just display information about the Work Center. I'm not going to auto load that. We're going to pick the Work Center model, the ID. This is actually not, I'm not going to use that, but that's fine because the way we built the other screen is I'm actually telling the form what ID I want it to load when you click a button in the table. So if I wanted to add buttons to my table, I'd drag another table column out, and I'm going to make my data, there's no data path because it's a button, right? And typically we call this an actions column is what we would name it. So it's very clear. Now, because I'm not going to define a data path, I need to make sure I don't query anything. So I need to open that object up there, get rid of that. And then the format, this is going to be an action. Now that I've changed that, now I can add my action steps. So if I want to add a, edit work center, right? So when I hover over that button, what's it going to tell the user? It's going to say edit work center. I want an icon button. Maybe I want a pencil. So we can search through all these different icons. I'm going to pick a pencil, and I want that to be, warning is like orangish yellow, but you could use any color you want, even a custom color. So that'll be my edit button. And then I would add my action steps, right? So this is where I would go and add my form, and I can pop up a form. I can also add a dialogue, a screen dialogue. So that screen widget that we talked about earlier, I could say screen dialogue, and then maybe it's that one, right? And then this would be system name there. And then what parameter am I going to pass in to this thing? It's probably going to be like the ID, and we would take components dot table one dot data dot selected rows dot ID or something to that effect, right? Let me copy that and actually go into the code editor, paste that. So there we go. So that would take the ID. It's going to say, hey, this screen that's going to pop up, I want to use the ID that comes from that row where I clicked the button, right? It's that row data. And I want to pass that in as the ID to my form. This might actually be simpler. Do row data.id, bada boom. There we go. So it's going to take the data from the row, which is the work center ID. It's going to pass it into this magical form that's going to pop up, and then whatever is in the form I can do. So I can set the max width on that so it doesn't get crazy on my screen. This one, I don't need flex wrap. Height, do 100%. So in here, this is where we're going to start to do maybe some inputs, but maybe just some text displays, right? So if I'm just going to display the work center code so it wouldn't be editable, I can just do that, and I can copy, and I can drop another text display in here for the name. Looks great. I could go to the advanced tab, and maybe this is, again, per my previous example, I want to drop a table in here. So I did forget. First, I dropped a table in. I don't usually like to do that right in the main. So I like to add a container and make that 100%. And then I'll go back, drop my table, make my table height 100%. And then what am I going to query for the table? Maybe this is going to be, work center history. Boom. And that one I'm going to auto load because I'm going to grab the ID. So this is, again, combining the API Explorer with the Screen Designer. What can I do here? So I'm going to do a filter, and I'm going to do ID is going to be, this is my predicate, is going to be equal to components dot form2 dot data dot ID. I'm pretty sure that form2 is the form that's in this details tab. It is. Because it's always just form 1, then form 2, then form 3. Now I can change the system name here. If I change the system name, call it, it fights me. Work center detail form. If I do that, then I have to make sure I go back and change anything that references that component, because it's not going to find that component anymore. So I want to change it from form 2 to the work center detail form.data.id. So when I click this tab, it's going to automatically load the table, and it's going to query the work center history based on the work center ID that it finds in the form on the other tab. That's how that's going to work. And I'm going to drop a table column in here. We'll grab duration, right? Whatever you want to display. And you can link out to several different tables. Say I want to grab the mode. I want to know, was it down? Was it running? Whatever it was. So there's a bit more wiring up here that we would want to do. I would want to add some filters to form 1. So probably like some select inputs where, maybe it's like ID. I want to filter on, probably not ID. Maybe I want to filter on the facility. It's great. Is going to be equal to something. So I've got that. And then we've already done this before, but let's do it again. Pick the facility model. I'm going to show the facility code. We're going to order by ascending by the code. We're only going to select one because I only want to allow the user to see all the work centers in a single facility. Remember, I'm going to change this data path to facility ID is going to be equal to. And then, yeah, maybe for whatever, I do only want to show the active one. So I'll add a rule here where active needs to be true. So I can save that and we can run this screen, and it's not going to work. There's a little bit more wiring up to do, but we have, we have our 3 containers, right? So that's all good. This would, query the table and return the work center results. We can come back here, and what you can do is you can put all sorts of transforms on here. So container 5, we would say, I want to hide it, right? So by default, when I hide it, now it won't show up on the right-hand side of my screen. So if we go back, that's gone. And then what I did on the other example that we looked at was I added that action button that would just show that container. So let's do that real quick so we can see how quickly we can wire this stuff up. Add a new action. I'm going to say show detail form, make it a button, do this. See what we got here. Okay, that's fine. I'll do that, and I'm going to make it green just so we can see it. I'm going to add a transformation down here. And in this transform, I basically want to do $components no, it's not form. This is container. And this is where it gets a little tricky. Got to find container 5. There we go. Container 5. Let me go back to this transform here. Boom. Container 5.function.show. I could use toggle. I can use show. So show will just show. If I do toggle, then if I click the button, every time I click the button, it will either hide it or show it based on its current state. So let's try that and see. So this is table 1, and here we've got the action button, which is not doing anything. So I will add a transformation where I'm going to components.table1.function.search. Right. So when I click the button, it'll search the table. Now, boom, there we go. I added that green button, and it should toggle my container. Let's see what's wrong. Click on actions, go down to show detail form, my transformation, components.container5. Right, so we found our problem here, and it's that container 5 has a capital, right? So the screen elements are going to be capital container when I was creating this, and that's why it wasn't doing what I expected it to do. So coming back in here, immediately when I looked at the transform and recognized that, I flipped it. We'll save that. Now we'll go back. Now when I hit search, it searches the table based on these filters. So if I pick that filter, I'm only going to get work centers in that facility, right? If I clear that filter, I get all my work centers. Let's go back. And then if I hit this guy, now I get my form off on the side. Now it's not loading anything yet. So let's do that, right? So the first transform I have is going to show it. And then I'll just keep this real simple, and I'll do a second transform here where I'm going to do $components.form2.function.load data. And you'll get really good with this after a while. Filter, and we're going to do the ID is going to be, it's going to be equal to, and I'm going to do $row data.id. You'll learn JSONATA, right? $$ means I need to escape all of this. I need to get outside of this context to get back to the row data. This should work. We'll see. I haven't done this in a minute. So search this, right? Cool. go back, search this. I like to redo everything like a bunch of times. So yeah, I'm not getting my form to load here. So there, some additional troubleshooting that we would do would go into the form. I would look at the form here. It is the work center. This could be a problem, so I'm definitely going to get rid of that because I don't want to have double filters if I'm telling it to filter based on something, right? So first thing I would do is see, did that have any impact for me? And it didn't, unfortunately. All right, so to continue kind of down this troubleshooting path that we normally will do when we're building screens and applications within the platform here. So what I've done is I've pulled up my developer console. So if you click on your avatar in the top right corner, you'll have developer mode, and it's an abstraction of in Chrome. You have the Chrome Dev Console. So this just tracks all of the transforms that are running on your page. So it gives you the ability to kind of drill through and look at context, what components are accessible, metadata, etc. Payload for your action inputs and so forth. So as we were going through this a moment ago, we're having a little trouble getting our form to load. So I'm looking here. And so we're getting the ID, it looks like everything's good. I can see the transform. I'm getting the row data ID. So my ID is right here, but there's, nothing happening in my form. So now this is where I go back to my screen designer, and this is what I found. So if I click on this form, this is Work Center detail form. So we changed this earlier on, and this is exactly what I was saying, is when you change the system name of something, you have to remember that that's going to have an adverse impact on any functions that are calling that, right, or interacting with that. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my actions. I'm going to scroll down to that action, the show detail form, right, and this transform where we're trying to load data, I had form 2. So originally, before I changed the name of that form, I was all good. Now it's Work Center detail form. So I'm going to update that, save it. So we're doing a little bit of troubleshooting, a little bit of app building here, a little bit of everything. So go back to my screen, go ahead and search. Let's look at laser. Oh, and now my form is working, right? So now I can see the result here from that action button is passing in the ID, the code, the name is being queried.